Hey everybody, and welcome back to X's4 Podcast. This is the Daily X, where we bring you news, information, and discussions about your favorite Marvel comics, most notably the X-Men. I'm Nico, and you guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram at NicoAction. That's NicoAction. And today we're here to bring you the beginning of the end. X Factor closed out the incredible Hellfire Gala with such an shocking issue and an amazing issue that it took us our entire team to properly discuss it. So over the next few episodes, you guys are going to get to hear some amazing perspectives on X Factor number 10, as well as the Hellfire Gala in its totality. We hope you guys enjoy, and if you do, don't forget to like and subscribe, as well as check out the podcast over at X's4 Podcast on Twitter. Until next time, guys, we'll see you. Hey everybody, welcome back to X's4 Podcast. I'm Nico, and you guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram at NicoAction. That's NicoAction.
Hey, it's Nathan. You can find me online on Twitter and Instagram at DazzlerAOA. That's like Dazzler, the pop goddess, but in the age of apocalypse.
And I'm Josh Wheel. You can find me online at Asleep at the Wheel, WEIL, and asleepatthewheel.com. And for the next 2 years as the Progressive Democrat running for U.S. Senate in the state of Florida, you can find me across social media at Wheel, the number 4 U.S. Senate, and at joshwheel.org.
Now, I need to say a thing, right? We need to do a little chrono skimming, a little Days of Future Pasting for a moment, right? Because last year in the summer, the team brought on 8 amazing new voices who have become the heart and soul of X's4 Podcast. And obviously there would be no show without the people who have come on in the last year. And this summer, we're trying to do it all again, right? So we are focusing on bringing on 1 million new voices. Not really, it's like 6. But we're bringing on new voices, and we've already debuted a number. But I am really excited to bring on another voice today. It's just so fitting that we can't stop adding Latin X nerds, and that's what we just have to do. So I want to welcome Dan to the show. Hey, Dan, say hey, everybody.
Hey, everybody. I'm Dan, aka Latin Krakoan, so kind of gave the game away there. Huge X-Men fan. If it counts, I'm from Ecuador, which is like the tiniest little country in Latin America, basically. So I'm a little unique that way, although the only connection I have to X-Men in Ecuador is that's where they built all the Sentinels that did all that stuff. But otherwise, great country.
Okay, so you're taking personal responsibility for the Trask family.
I'm looking for any connections I can get. That's our history. Or tiny. We'll take what we can get.
Well, tiny but mighty, as you guys created the Sentinels, sort of. But okay, from Sentinels to good things. We're here to talk about X Factor number 10 by Leah Williams and David Baldon. And this issue was, we've been mourning this issue in advance, right? It's one of the saddest things when you know something that you love is going to end and you start to get that sort of morose malaise about the impending end. And I feel like we've been stuck in this mourning cycle of a book that we loved so much that we felt was in many ways yanked away from us here. And it was, kind of put down there. And before we can even get into it, whenever we have a new person come on, we always get a sense of their feels for the title that we're talking about. So first up, Dan, and then generally everybody, who has been your favorite character throughout this entire run of X Factor?
Oh, that's a great question. So going into it, there's obviously the heavy hitters we knew of at the time, Daken, now Akihiro, as we call him, Rachel, Northstar I knew a little bit about, but not as much. But I think, and I might be cliche, iBoy is the one that glows up the most through the 10 issues. Not only in a micro way, and that's what we really love about the book, right? We got to see the relationships. iBoy interacted with everyone in a really emotional and deep way, whether it was total joy or being frightened at times. But by issue 10, he's basically Kamehameha with his eye power and blasting people while almost having Zing's power through his eyes, basically, of knowledge, just by being around people. So on an emotional level and on a macro level, what it means to Krakoa, I think iBoy is my MVP.
Man, I think that is such a beautifully put together answer. I can't help but feel like for me, it is, of course, Daken. And here's why. I'm a pansexual disaster, always looking for a place to happen. So I do have that whole sort of I guess I do kind of have like a daddy complex in a lot of ways. I just think, I'm going to cut that, but
Hold on. You're a pansexual disaster who wants to be Wolverine. Like, we can be more specific.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So let's just note it. I'm a pansexual disaster who wants to be Wolverine. I am always looking for the best way to snikt my life right off the tracks. So there's something, and if you know my husband, who is, I think, the best human in the world, right? My husband is perfect, but there is something very sort of standoffish and Jean-Marie about my husband in a really undeniable way. So there was a lot about his journey that tickled my fancy just the right shade of pink. How about you guys? Nathan, Josh, where did you guys feel X Factor's strongest character resonate moments were for you in English,
Okay,
I guess?
okay. Obviously, like, I came into this loving iBoy from Christina Strange Generation X, but Leah Williams's depiction of him like took him from like a B tier character to like a A tier character to me. I have to say too, I loved the journey that Rachel went on. Like, she went from from B sad lesbian to like really cool, trendy, happy lesbian, and I love it. I
Spicy
love it.
lesbian.
Oh my God, the number of
She's
FSLs I've dealt with.
I would have, if I hadn't heard the interview where Leah, before the release of X Factor 1, where she said that Rachel is basically like the stoner lesbian or stoner bi, like, for her, and that, like, that's how she's doing her for the whole series, I would have been really kind of confused or upset about, like, what the fuck's going on with Rachel. But, at least having that up front, it made perfect sense. And, I'm a little disappointed we didn't get enough Rachel. Like, I love Rachel appearances, and this title just didn't live long enough to give it to us.
Hmm.
For me, yeah, Trevor was fantastic. Although, he already emotionally impressed on me in Christina Strange Gen X. So it was just, kind of like a level up, like Nathan said. It was Daken was the one who kind of I didn't care for in the past, but Leah made me love. Like, that's the one with the stronger feels, especially in this final issue. I mean, where he has grown into something with Jean-Marie here that is true to all of the salty, sexy, manic, depressive, energy that he has all along, but also is kind of more focused and renewed and sweet, and you love it. And just when you think, like, oh, he's too good, it's out of character, then he reminds you that, like, by the way, I went back and killed all those motherfuckers, so we're in this together now.
Yes.
And God, it's so good.
There's something super, and like, I mean this the best possible way. Like, I hope everyone's with me on this. There's something romantic brown autumn in a Woody Allen movie, minus all the rape, plus some Sorkin, and I guess a little bit more cocaine, but a lot more chill. Like, maybe you're having drinks at the bar of a Mongolian barbecue place off of 7th, right? Like, there's something so elegant that is a home safe place, and maybe it's just for me, and that's why I got so specific. But there's something really elegant about that romantic moment between Dakin and Jean-Marie in this issue. It's that moment of the dance is like so kind and real and vulnerable and honest for both of them. Akihiro says, "I'm going to put it out on the line. Here's some dirt on me." And he's such a character that I've long made fun of. Josh, I was just lucky enough to edit a piece that you and I did earlier in the week, and it was a piece where we both talked a little bit how Daniel Way's writing is occasionally very silly. And he had a moment in his Wolverine Origins, the original run, that made this character of Dakin the Dark Wolverine kind of a big thing. And the moment is Dakin is living with this woman, and she's sad, so she starts to drink, and he comes home and he's like, "Oh, little sad woman, did you drink the wine that I left, that I knew you would drink after I left a note that made you think you'd been cheated on, so you drank the wine that I knew you would drink, and I poisoned it, and now you're about to die." And like, that happens, and then she dies. Like, it's terrible, right? And I feel like if you contextualize that moment of vulnerability against that early moment of the character, there is something like the best redemptions of the X-Men about that really just comes together in a perfect coalescing of idea and story and character. How did everybody feel about the final payoff of Dakin and Aurora that naturalizes and normalizes so quickly that they feel like a likely couple as they go throughout the rest of the issue together?
I really liked how it ended for them specifically because I think it dealt with the common theme of specifically this book and obviously all 10 issues, but the trauma of it. The point where they really were able to trust and be affectionate with each other and really connect in a real way outside of just watching a movie together or sharing some food together at the tower while things were happening is the final realization that I understand all of your trauma. I accept you for or who you are instinctively because we are things outside of our experiences, right? But our experiences also shape us. The acceptance for both of them. He also knew that after I told this person I loved that I just murdered a few people, that we're going to be okay. It's going to be actually a really nice thing. We're going to kiss afterwards, right? That's a lot. That's a lot to deal with. And I think it bounces with the opening scene of this book when Kyle is talking to JP and asking like, hey, what about all this trauma of this, right? It informs you, right? It shapes you in some way. And it's not just a piece of data or information, right? Knowing the lived experience and knowing what feelings are, that changes you. X Factor 1 started with Kyle and JP together and ends in the same way with the first page, but it's asking through an avatar of ourselves, like, should we feel things about this?
I think that was like, I think it really, to me, definitely, this, like you were saying, Dan, it really like solidifies the point of this book, right? This was like, let's be honest, this was a book about these characters processing their trauma. Like, that's like the whole soul point of this book to me, it seems like. And these characters processed it and grew from it. Dakin grew from what he was before. Aurora grew and starting to accept who she is, not even just because of the trauma, but before the trauma. So just the fact that they at least had a complete story in that way, it's kind of beautiful that way.
So at this point, I think, we need to talk about the fact that this wasn't supposed to end, because especially that conversation and the way it came out, and mad props to Leah Williams. I love Leah Williams. She has become one of my absolute favorite writers to read. In just current comics. And the fact that she made this so good, despite clearly needing to wrap up multiple loose plot threads, like from along the series, very quickly, and in as few characters speaking as possible, because the more times you go back and forth on dialogue, the more panels you have to use, the more pages you use, to be able to work it so that way this is Daken or Akihiro saying these things to her because we have a character who has only ever had one person in her life that she could truly trust or be open and vulnerable like that with. And that she would need someone in order to kind of break through and form that intimacy with someone else. She would need someone to kind of take the wheel and help guide her there. Like when she was ready, she would need someone to help kind of lead her into that step, which is something that the character of Daken can do. He is naturally going to jump up and be that driver person anyway. And it played off of their characters and their needs so well in a way that allowed her to tie up multiple loose plot threads from throughout the series and cement a budding relationship in the very limited space she had. And, it's reading this, how many plot threads had to be wrapped up at just rapid fire pace made it clear to me that this was an abrupt cancellation, that this was not something that was known about months in advance, because I don't believe that Leah would have paced out the last story with the Morrigan as long as she did to then leave herself one issue to clear up the mystery behind Jean-Marie's death and the mystery behind David's death and the issues going on with their relationships, and deal with the Hellfire Gala, and have Trevor's powers that are budding, and like all of these things that had to come through at once and be tied up. I feel like there's another big mystery plot thread too there were just so many that came so quick, like everything that she had been seeding,
like
was
who's in
at
the
once.
egg? Who's in the egg? I have no idea who's in the
Is that
egg
Teresa?
or what it means.
Well, and I feel like there were literally things that she sort of was like, yeah, look, here's what's going on. There is no possible way for me to show the Shatterstar Richter reunion in any meaningful way. So
Yeah.
read it in the other book. And I don't think
Yeah.
that's a cop out. I think frankly, Shatterstar wasn't her main focus, so letting it be Richter's moment makes a commentary about not taking an actual man of color's character moment away from him. There's things to be said about it that means that I just want to. I feel like, how do I even say it right? There is no version of this story that was fair to David or Leah, and I'm sure there is, the argument to be made that this book couldn't have existed 3 years ago or whatever, and that's true, and that's great. You can fuck yourself on that all you want, but
It failed to deliver on the promise of the first issue, which is something that bothers me so much, because that first issue ended with all of those, redacted laws of that they were going to, put together case by case, and that we were going to have, years of stories crafting, what would be the resurrection protocols, that they were all there redacted and we would be undoing them one by one. And we never got back to that once since the first issue, which is one of the things that has not sat well with me about this. And it hurts more because I love it so much, because David Baldion's art and the emotion that he's put into these characters, the facial expressions, and God, just the way that how beautiful this series has been is something that I am sad is ending early. And then to find out that other series are continuing, that we're getting more Children of the Atom, which has just felt like such a blended up mess, and that the line is continuing with other books, but not this book, but not this just freaking masterclass from two phenomenal creators. It's hard. It hurts. I have feels.
That's another one. Yeah, I mean, finales are. I'm a fan of Lost, which is can be controversial. Even more controversial, I'm a fan of the Lost finale. I think finales are tricky. I think even in the best case scenario, if we gave X Factor another year, and let's say it got to issue 30, if they ended it there, I think it's hard to end things for everyone to be happy with. And I think that's what this issue felt a lot for me. I left it agreeing almost entirely objectively with all of their decisions on how to wrap it up, but only given the context of that I knew about the cancellation and I knew about all that it meant in the industry of it. So as a story, as a comic book fan, I was satisfied. But if I was just to pick up the story and said, what do you think about the quality of this story? I would say it's rushed. And both things can be true at the same time. But I think that's a lot of the conflict that we see on Twitter. And more specifically, for some people, it's rushed on stories that deal with their specific traumas. Because as X-Men fans right now, we're very over death and everything that it can be permanent because of the revival stuff. But the whole point, I think, again, to bring back the trauma is just because we don't feel something or even see it on the page doesn't mean we can't feel the horrible things that can come out of a story being told about it. And when those things feel rushed, it hurts even more. And that's what I think people are feeling right now.
So I have a double response to that, which is I have to preempt my response with a preemptive response. I'm standing over here feeling like, when you go to karaoke and it's just you and your friends and you just want to do Promiscuous by Nelly Furtado and Timbaland, and you find out that you're in two performers, and the next performer gets up there and does a number from Dreamgirls, and you're like, oh, all right, well, crushed my balls with a brick, I guess. It's because everything he said, right? And now I'm going to follow it up with. So sometimes I think people think of comic books too much like TV shows, and I don't think comic books are TV shows. I
Yeah.
understand the obvious parallels, but I actually think comic books function a lot more like albums in a lot of ways. I feel like a really good comic run can feel like a good comic arc can feel like an album. It should have a beginning that moves you into the story, and if it's an artist you've heard before, it has a familiar vibe. As you go through the story, it brings you to a logical conclusion at the end of the album, and frequently artists over their lifetime are able to provide you a number of records, and it builds a bigger picture, right? And one of the things is you can thematically jump from record to record. I brought up Promiscuous, and I don't think a lot of people realize, but there's a lot of thematic connections between Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation 1814 and Nelly Furtado's Loose. And they both actually hold a number of records for hit singles and album sales, and it's terrific, right? But I think what hurts the most is we can hear the album X Factor was always supposed to be, but there are so many things that jeopardized the reality of that album, right? And I feel like I resent that issue 4 isn't by David, because the work he did on this issue is scrumptious, and I feel like you can't possibly take a look at this book and not see how it truly is like sort of reflective and kind of deformed fashion. We talked with David Nakayama about a number of his covers that have that, Vogue feel. And for all of the ways he captured the visual essence of what comes together to make the components of a Vogue magazine, I think in a lot of ways, David and Leah found a way to compose an issue that reads like a magazine. There's dating advice, there's advice for your life, there's fashion, there's dynamic spreads, there's talking about media and its effects on personage. I feel like they sort of took the amazing things that Elaine Welteroth was doing over at Teen Vogue, revolutionizing the feminist agenda to be a young woman of color ready to take on the world. And I feel like they found a way to extrapolate the parts of that resonate through the cultural zeitgeist right now with the aggressive progressive movement of X Twitter, for the most part. Fuck you, Rob Liefeld. And I feel
Here,
like
here, here, here.
that's where we're at with this book. You can hear the record it should be.
See, I'm going to agree with Dan on calling it a TV show. And it's not to say that some aren't records. I mean, Kieran Gillen is on record as, saying that he plots all of his like records.
That's awesome.
And every writer is different. I like the idea of TV shows and seasons. I wish Marvel and DC would go more to that. I would love to see them do 10 issues a year or 12 issues over 10 months and then break for hiatus and summer crossover and come back and, have their creative teams reset only at those, like work it like actual seasons with off season and, set it for the trades better like that. That's not my idea. There's a Jeff Jensen who's a Entertainment Weekly writer and sometime comic book writer. He wrote the 4-issue miniseries of X Factor Volume 2. Came up with that one a while ago, and it just makes too much sense. But for me, this one definitely played like a regular TV series, like with a season, not like a soap opera. Many comics do that. Dan Slott comics do the shit out of that. Like they're just like going forever, and it's just next issue, next issue, next issue, next issue. But this felt like a season 1 of something that was meant to have a season 2. Like this is Firefly, where okay, yes, we got a complete thing, but don't fucking tell me this is supposed to be all of it. Like
It's like if Community got one season, basically.
Yeah. So my look on this, the way this is ending is when I was reading this book, obviously I was like, okay, this feels rushed, but I also remembered something that Terry Blass said when we talked to him the other day, that, the editor said, if there's something that you want for that character, you make sure you put it on the page. So I think Leah had this story envisioned for David, which is the one that obviously the big controversial one, but I think she had the story envisioned and she wanted to flesh it out and tell this whole story, but with the cancellation she had to wrap it up and put it on the page because she wanted it to be part of the character, and it was part of what was informing her of the character as she wrote the series. And I think that's the one takeaway I had from it. Like, this is something that she really wanted to include in the character's history and backstory, but she just didn't get a chance to tell this tale the way she wanted to.
Yeah, do any of you feel that, given the culture that we see in the X office right now of everyone talking about how much they trust each other, how much they bounce ideas off each other, how nothing is really an individual, like I'm going to do this, don't really care what everyone else is doing. Everyone kind of seems that they want to be a bigger part of the map, at least. Would it have been wiser to said, one of these we're going to leave a mystery, and that's going to give us a lot more emotional time and actually page time and dialogue time to wrap up all the other things a little more cleaner, and then trust that the next writer will do that? Or do you think there's some sort of fear?
Because
Yeah.
this was Leah's, like, clearly, and it goes to show that I don't think, even though X Factor is going to play a decent sized part, we're told, in the trial of Magneto, and Leah's obviously going to use characters she loves, like, obviously there's not enough time there for her to have wrapped up or done any of this in those pages, because, like Nathan said, she made a point here to put every character at a very specific, deliberate place. Like,
Right.
This is writer on a file. Like, you've got one issue to wrap this shit up. She made sure David is where she wanted to leave him. Trevor is where she wanted to leave him. Akihiro and Jean-Marie, like she put all of them exactly where she wanted to leave them. Like I felt like she's putting the pieces down specifically on the board. And it's a lot for one issue. Like that's a lot.
It is a
Yeah.
lot.
And I think the problem has to do a lot with, and this isn't like geek culture, this is like human brain culture. And I do hear you saying you love the idea of a lot of the open endedness of the Lost finale, and there's nothing wrong with liking what you like, unless it's Romulus. But I think the key thing here is because X Factor was never designed to have the mystery linger, right? X Factor is an investigation book. So X Factor is a book about solving mysteries, not about leaving mysteries. And I think there would have been something a little bit counter, a little bit counter to the idea of what X Factor was meant to be, right? This idea of solving the mysteries. I did, however, think that pacing has not been on the side of the X office in about 2 years. Because of the uncertainty of the
Interesting.
market, it's been a wild ride. And I know that we definitely felt that way about Ten of Swords at the time. And rereading Ten of Swords, I really think if it was two separate crossovers, I'd love it.
The pacing on Ten of Swords is bananas.
Mhm.
And yeah, a lot of things also, like there was a global pandemic that fucked up a lot of industries, and comics got caught in the middle of it as well. Like, yeah,
Caught
stuff's been
in
going
the
on.
crossfire.
Stuff's been going on, but also, if there's any one editorial line or office in comics that I would expect to be organized enough to roll through this, it would be the X office, because what we've seen from them with really the double management, having JDW and Hickman both in, as somewhat group editor roles, having the X Slack and the way they talk about it and the subgroups and the communication among the writers and the way that they share and work off of each other that we've seen in the past. You would think that if you're the one organizing this, right? Which, I mean, this is, we'll call out, crack shot here, that if anyone was going to manage the pace or keep it despite all that's been going on, it would be the X office. And so, yeah, it's still disappointing when they don't.
So now to kind of reframe that question a little bit, perhaps more specifically, how do you guys feel about the general treatment of Shatterstar outside of that initial issue where we kind of got that full sense of who he was? I feel like Shatterstar has been unfortunately remaindered to a minimal dialogue, maximum staring sadly off into the distance. And that's not a knock on Leah. I mean, I really do think this book was pretty much top to bottom perfect. I have problems with it, of course, because art is something that should be examined and made personal, blah, blah, blah. But, the book is pretty fucking near perfect. I really do think, though, that Shatterstar is perhaps the stone left the most unturned in this finale. I would
Yeah,
have
and when you
liked
say
a
minimal
little.
dialogue, he doesn't have a word. There's not a
No.
line. Yeah, there just wasn't enough. And you know what? Maybe then again, if we're looking at this, maybe Baldeon didn't have the time, but should this have been 30 pages?
It should have been 40.
Yeah, supersized
Felt small.
finale.
Felt small.
But okay, so with Shatterstar, what I didn't like was in issue 9 they teased that, oh my god, he's gonna actually tell his mom who his mom is. So just the fact that Leah left that open again and reopened that can of worms, that sort of got me a little flustered and a little not just because I want more of her, but come on, don't bring that story up if you're not gonna attempt to do it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, and it's better to get this out of the way. I rejoined comics because of House of X. I read a little as a kid. Animated series, all for it. But what really brought me back was this. So Shatterstar was a thing I needed to catch up on, right? Like many other things that new X-Men fans have to do. So for me, the more and more I read about him, not even issues, I just picked up some of his single issues for his book, and that's great. But as far as information, if I knew no information, then it is very correct. It is mostly like a sad looking, very good looking dude looking out in the distance. His first appearance in X Factor, I think, is a lot more fun. The second one, obviously, he's not the protagonist's face or the moving piece of it all. It's other people doing the movement. But I think that now with so much knowledge of him, there couldn't have been, at least for me, a better finale for him in this book than issue number 9. That 2-page Dazzler song with the lyrics just specifically hitting very emotional tones for them. The only way it could have been better for me is a full out like 5-page reunion that's emotional. And again, there was just no space, time, dialogue, or pages to do that.
I think from what Leah has said, I think halfway writing 9, they got the cancellation notice that they would have to go into X Factor 10. I mean, the X Factor 10 would end it at the gala. And I think the reason they included that part of it is because they already released the cover for it. So, like, Dazzler and Lila Cheney featuring on the cover of it, they're like, okay, we got to include that in it. But it's just, But if you're ever looking for a really good Shatterstar story, go back and read New Mutants Dead Soul. That's amazing. Even though Shatterstar is only in it a little bit, it shows a great complexity to their relationship.
Awesome.
And, it's that personal relationship that I think most defines X Factor and is going to define it in its future. One of the things, though, that I know books sometimes lose is in that historical revisionism, right? Where you're looking back on a book, you don't always get the same sense of things. And I feel like in a lot of ways, Nathan, what you came to this book for, you sometimes kind of got circle jerked on. There was a lot of stuff where you were really looking forward to it. And that's not that it didn't pay off in a satisfactory way, but it maybe didn't pay off in the ways you expected, like the initial portent of Polaris being the bearer of the prophecy in Ten of Swords, and then the setup and mostly disappointment of Dazzler and Shatterstar. You've had a pretty interesting relationship with this book where no matter how many times they sort of faked you out on things you thought you wanted, you stayed with the book and you stayed excited about it. How do you feel 10 issues later with the series at its unfortunate early conclusion? And how do you feel about where these characters are, knowing that it really wasn't the journey you expected?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It was not the journey I expected. The fact that this book is over, and yes, it kept hitting me with not surprises, but yeah, they jerked me around on some of like the initial promises. But the thing that kept me around and the thing that I loved, and I know we're gonna get it from with her in different characters, is just the depth at which Leah Williams writes these characters. It really feels like you can begin to understand them. Just like I don't think anybody has, like, I always loved Rachel, but I don't think anybody ever made Rachel lovable to me. Whereas I always just loved her because I'm like, yeah, she's awesome, she's kick-ass, and look what she's been through. But this gave us human moments for Rachel. It gave us we were able to see Lorna's pain in more than just oh shit, she has been like controlled her whole life. So we actually got to see that. We got to see the weight of being Magneto's daughter on her head. So I didn't get what I expected, but I came out with something I didn't know I needed, and I'm so grateful for it. I just hope we see these iterations of these characters continue, because I know that when you get these characters under a different hand, even the continuation of X Factor is gonna not really be able to focus on them. It's gonna have to focus on the event that it is. I hope we're able to see these characters sort of continue this journey we've seen.
Well, let's talk about a character who can't continue shit because she's super dead, right? Let's talk for a
Oh,
minute.
Wanda.
It's such a fucking bitter
It
like
was
most
Magneto all along.
yeah, like
No,
most
no, he did not do it. I swear to you. Sorry.
like most white suburban queers, I grew up obsessed with all the female powerhouses. And, the number of times a Wanda's gotta bite it so that a Magneto can have his story moved forward is certainly a question that I'm going to be asking forever. But if there's a team I trust to maybe have the right kind of input on this, it's this team. Guys, how do you feel about knowing that the great pretender has been felled by some hand?
So we have to go back to Sword first. We have to go back to that ending of Sword 6. And, where we got on the final pages that, Wanda arrived after the gala at Magneto's invitation, and, where he had this emotional moment where he wanted to apologize to her and, tell her that he was going to make things right no matter what. And, that was the lead up to this. I know we've had some side discussion, I think, in last week's chat. We talked about what the potential crime could be for the trial of Magneto. Clearly it would have to break one of the 3 laws, killing a human, not making more mutants, or violating the sacred land. And I was thinking that, okay, well, he brought the Great Pretender to Krakoa. Maybe his trial is going to be violating the sacred land. And now we see that she's dead, obviously, which brings up a lot of questions based on what we saw previous. Like, we didn't see an angry Magneto. We didn't get, this "how dare you don't belong here." Like, we got just the opposite. And
Hey,
she's not a
Pookie,
mutant.
welcome to my party.
She's not a mutant. She's not a mutant, so killing her does break a law. But
Unless we're gonna find out she is a mutant again, unless
So-
all of the
I brought this
remenderings
up.
are done.
I brought this up to Nico, in our little private chat. But what if Magneto killed her to try to have her resurrected as a mutant?
So oh my god. So yes. Okay, Josh. Because
Yes.
Okay, Josh. Yes.
because Cerebro would have registered as a mutant when she was a mutant, right? Because the Sentinels did. So Cerebro would have, right? So couldn't
I don't
they
know.
have
Cerebro thought Franklin Richards was a mutant until Dan Slott cocked that one up.
But I was thinking about that too. Like, what if Franklin died, and because I knew Wanda died, I asked it the day before because it leaked all over the place on the internet. But what if Cerebro is able to bring them back as mutants in that mindset they were when they registered as mutants, and their bodies come back as mutants as well with the XG.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just see, I think that, okay, I think we're going to find out whatever made Wanda and Pietro not mutants is over, and they're back to being mutants, no big deal. I don't even think we're going to have an explanation for it. I think it's just going to be oh, it's mutants again. It's okay. It's okay if they're mutants, guys. Right? And I think that's really all I need for it. And Franklin, I think that Reed has concocted something. Because
that unspoken thing that we didn't see him tell Xavier, hey, motherfucker, I fucking got you.
Now, or is that
He's
that
fuck
just
your boyfriend, Eric? Sorry.
Is that just Hickman planting seeds, knowing hey, guess what? We're gonna be on Krakoa longer than Dan Slott's gonna be on Fantastic Four. The boy's coming back eventually.
And welcome back to Xi4P Podcast. I'm Arturo, and today we're going to be talking about X Factor number 10. It's the last song at the Hellfire Gala and Our Last Dance with Leah and David's X Factor. Today I've got joining with us a special guest and friend of the pod, North Star aficionado and X-Twitter resident, Mac. Mac, say hi and tell everyone where they can find you.
Hey everyone, don't know why I waved, but hey everyone, I'm Mac. You can find me on Twitter at TransNorthstar.
And we have with us another friend of the pod and recurring contributor, Steve. Say hi to everybody.
Hello everybody. It's me, Steve. You can find me on Twitter at HowdyDuda. That's HOWDYDUDA. And you can also find my contributions on previous X's4 Podcast coverage of Children of the Atom, Wolverine, X-Men Legends, and Classic X-Men. And you can also find me over at X of Words.
Yeah, Steve's a hoe, just like me. Just get on a pod. This week in X Twitter coverage, we saw violence. We saw people fighting and arguing about this book literally the day before it came out, which I think was a little bit unprecedented. Content warning there. We got into some tense racial and homophobic, violence in this issue, or at least those topics. It was a triggering thing for a lot of people, and it sparked a fiery debate. And as most often is the case, it's probably better sometimes to listen than to jump into the fray and start shouting. All right, so the issue opens up, and X Factor is at the Boneyard. Their cozy HQ. They're getting ready for the gala. They're getting all dressed up. What were some of y'all's favorite looks from this team? Before we get into the heavy stuff, let's talk some red carpet.
I really love what iBoy and Aurora are wearing. Aurora's is nothing too fancy, but just incredible. She's drawn absolutely incredibly throughout the issue. iBoy's look was just like unbelievable. Both him and Prodigy wearing similarly matching outfits was very cool. And I loved to see David's like gleeful look and his beautiful golden eye makeup. iBoy's just surprised the hell out of me. Never did I think I'd see something like that. Not on iBoy.
How about you, Mac?
Actually, I think David's was my favorite. I don't think you can ever go wrong with a gold dress and, showing off your chest.
I love that when Tommy shows up and sees them in dresses, he's like, "You're in dresses? We should all be in dresses all the time."
Yeah.
Like, I love
Absolutely.
that was so fun. Yeah, for me, iBoy's look kind of stole the show. Like, when I'd seen it, it's funny because some of these looks are really cool when you see them static, and then they change when you see them in motion. And like iBoy, just the way Baldeon drew it, like, I just love it. And I love seeing this glow up for him. He's growing up, and he's expanding. We'll get into that a little bit more. So X Factor appears at the gala, and they go there with their buddies, the Five, because once upon a time this was going to be the book where the Five would get a lot more shine, and unfortunately, I don't think we ever got enough runway to get there. However, it's a short-lived visit at the gala for Prodigy because he disappears for a little bit. Oh, here's something: a cameo from one of the Children of the Atom kids. Steve, I know you've been covering that on the show. How did you feel seeing Carmen on the pages of X Factor?
I was kind of surprised. I didn't expect to see her show up so soon and have complete confirmation before the next issue of Children of the Atom came out that she is indeed a mutant and the only one probably in the group. I expected this, but I didn't expect it to be, I don't want to say spoiled, but like if you're reading this book, then you know what happens next, right? Very good to see her. I like the outfit quite a lot. Nice little touch.
And then we find out, or not find out, but it's once again revealed or confirmed, Lorna has won the election. I think there's that bittersweet moment seeing her and North Star interact. Mac, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And actually, let's take a step back. Mac, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your passion for North Star. I kind of glossed over that, but I think let's talk about that.
Obviously, big North Star fan. I wouldn't say I'm the biggest, other people call me the biggest North Star fan, but I know some bigger ones. But, I think, he's really a fascinating character, because he's an asshole. Everyone hates him because he's an asshole, but, there's so much, fascinating stuff going on behind the scenes where, we get these scenes with him and Lorna where it's you see that, he is, he genuinely cares and, he just doesn't seem to be able to show it very well.
So how did you feel about seeing him with Lorna interacting and that bittersweet goodbye?
I loved seeing the growth of the team. I think one of the strongest things about X Factor is that, we didn't really see much on panel them becoming a family, but they just automatically were. And I think that's really true for a lot of teams and friend groups even where you just instantly click with people and they're able to have these bonds. And I'm trying to pull it up as I talk so I can actually talk about what they say.
I mean, I think one thing that was really special, or one thing that's very special about their relationship specifically, is I think in the hearts and minds of most people, Lorna felt like the leader of the team in a lot of ways, but she very purposely said, no, I am not going to be the leader. I nominate, North Star as our leader. So they had this interesting dynamic, and it kind of takes me back to, original Peter David run of X Factor, where yes, Havoc was the leader, but Lorna was kind of the center of the team, in a lot of ways. But yeah, they just have this mutual kind of respect and admiration. And of course, Lorna is an ally and a fan of the gays.
She's everyone's gay awakening.
Absolutely.
I love seeing North Star and Kyle become sort of the two dads of the team in so many ways, teaching Akihiro about cell phones and such. Absolutely warmed my heart.
And I would love to actually hear, or just getting into, the Kyle of it all. I gotta say, I had never really been a fan. I find Kyle kind of as a dead end story wise. Like other people have talked about this at length, but he was never really much of a character before they got married. Then they were married, and he ends up being a damsel in distress sometimes, and it's like I would be so much more into North Star, being single or dating Iceman or, 1,000 other possibilities. But I will say, and I give Leah full credit for this, in the span of 10 issues, I have converted. I'm a fan. I love Kyle. I think he's a good supporting human character. And I like that they're happy. Like I think representation matters. We need so many more queer people and on the team. But if North Star and Kyle are going to be that like happy gay married couple, like I'm honestly ready for them to adopt one of the kids over from Way of X and like fully like make them that couple. Like I'm into
Yeah,
it. I
absolutely.
never cared about Kyle. Now I will defend Kyle.
I love Kyle.
I'm gonna shock everyone and say that. Oh, sorry. I'm gonna shock everyone and say that I've been defending Kyle ever since Astonishing X-Men, but I really, until X Factor, I was, worried about his place. There are a lot of things, I think they sort of like set him up as a bad character, and then, not a bad character, but like, he's very tied to North Star, like, he works for North Star and everything, so like, the series did a good job of like, actually giving Kyle a little bit of like, life outside of North Star as a character, and I think that really helped, make their marriage a little less like, Marvel just throwing us a couple and being like, oh, here's representation, you'll see him every like 5 years maybe, and really made them feel like a couple.
Loved seeing them together so much in X Factor, like all the time, and getting to see their little slight arguments and their cute moments together. And Kyle's interactions with Captain America were really just the cake for me in this issue. It was really wonderful to see that. His nonchalant comfortableness as a human in Krakoa.
And in that moment, it was kind of like Cap realized, oh, wait a minute, maybe if I, maybe I would be welcome here if my infatuation with Emma Frost comes to any fruition. I was very happy to see also Shatterstar on these pages, and here's where I have a lot of, a lot of feelings. I am forever grateful that Leah teed this all up and brought Shatterstar back. And I'm very happy about them being reunited. I'm also, very concerned with how Tinny is handling it over in Excalibur. Like that reunion wasn't what I expected, but I'm still very hopeful that it's going to go in the right direction. And she's just taking a rockier road for the sake of it being more interesting. And again, I don't want them to just be a boring married couple. Like I would like Rick and Shatterstar to like be a fun, good story of them. So I was happy to see Shatterstar here. In hindsight, I think I was hoping for more than is reasonable because we already saw what plays out with them that night. So nonetheless, it was nice to have a little cameo of him. Where did Prodigy go while everyone else was at the gala? Well, gentle listeners, he went to solve the mystery of his murder. This has been a long simmering plot thread that's been going through this entire run. I've said it before when we covered issue number 9. It felt like these long plot threads that Leah was developing all got thrown into a blender, hit puree, and like let's sort it all out. And that's why we got so many things resolved last issue, and she tried to tie up these issues here. And this, I don't know, this was a hell of a reveal, we'll say. We find out here that about a year ago, so Krakoa had been established. As far as I know, at that time, I don't think Prodigy had his powers yet. When he got resurrected from this murder is when he got his powers. About a year ago, he was basically hunting a serial killer in the Los Angeles area who's very specifically targeting Black queer youths. And this is loosely based on serial killer Ed Buck. And that was just like in the last few years. Certainly Ed Buck is not the first or last serial killer to target queer men or queer people or specifically Black queer people. But it was a heavy thread, it was a heavy thread to needle into this already packed issue. How did this hit for you guys? What were your feelings going through this?
It was a lot. I could see what the writer was trying to accomplish with bringing up something so topical, so real, and so recent. I think a combination of the rushed work on this story, finishing it up, and the fact that it happened during Pride Month, which is just a small thing, and the fact that it ends up giving more space to the white characters around Prodigy made me pretty displeased with this turn of events. It's good to see writers attempting to tackle these real life issues. The awkwardness with which it was accomplished is certainly a huge drag on the end of this series to cap it off.
How about you, Mac? What was your take on this?
Yeah, I felt sort of similarly where, I think issues like this, of like talking about like the violence that Black queer men face, is super important to discuss in comics. And I think, these raw issues do have a place. And especially like issues 1 through 9 do a beautiful job of like talking about trauma and, unpacking it in a way where it's still like, it's not like saying like comics have, or like the safe spaces, but like, X Factor is definitely, in Leah's letter, she says she was trying to accomplish a safe space. And I think, issues 1 through 9 do a beautiful job of like unpacking trauma and, themes of domestic violence. And like to see 10 sort of kind of flip it and like do it in a way where it's like, you can see how rushed it is and we're just trying to get through it. But I think it might have been better to just, already focus on the gala, because there's already so much going on with the Hellfire Gala. And then, I hope we might see some of it still carried over to the trial of Magneto. And, maybe we'll get some more of David's healing there. But
See,
more just healing.
I'm so torn about this, and I've thought about it and gone a couple different directions. So I'll kind of walk you guys through that a little bit. Like, a part of me wishes, well, number one, I wish we got 100 issues of X Factor. I think Leah was clearly writing long form stories. It's not unprecedented. Like, Peter David specifically had 2 of the longest and most iconic runs with the team. I felt like Leah was the new inheritor of that. And it's X Factor. That's one of the tent poles. You have X-Men, X-Force, X Factor, Excalibur. Like, everything else is extra, right? We got Hellions, we got Marauders, we're blessed by, but those are the 4 tent poles. So I thought, and I am fairly certain that Leah and David felt that they had a lot more runway. So yes, it was really rushed. Let's get into the actual story of it. A lot of the chatter is, well, Leah doesn't have, this isn't Leah's story to tell. And I think that is a very justifiable read. And I've been just trying to do a lot more listening this week as people have been lashing out about this issue. But I got to give her credit where credit is due, because not only, one, yes, she definitely created a safe space. This was the queer book of the whole Krakoan era, that you had North Star and Kyle, happy married couple. North Star's leading the team. David making out with Tommy. You've got that plot thread going. You've got, Akiro, bisexual. Yes, he's with Aurora, but fuck you if you think that because he's dating her, that makes him any less bisexual. He is bisexual. So that's something that I think, I've seen some criticism about, and I suggest that those people, kind of look at their own biases, because that does not erase part of his queer identity just because he is in a quote unquote straight presenting relationship. It was a great story. I think she was going to do something cool with Rachel. Like, there was, a lot more to be done. We didn't get that, but she did create a safe space. I also think violence against the queer community is a real thing. That's part of our history. Like, yes, we celebrate Pride Month, but part of that is, underscoring the struggles and, everything that led to it. This whole issue hit for me in a very different way. And I'm going to share with you guys a personal, bit of my history. Back in 2003, I had a boyfriend who lived in Tampa. I was living in Central Florida, and his roommate, a good friend of mine, and his best friend and roommate, went missing, and nobody knew when or where or how. He was murdered by a serial killer named Steve Lorenzo in Florida, who was going out to gay bars and with somebody else, and basically slipping GHB into people's drinks, taking them home, etc. And, so that's a very real thing. That shit happened. My friend got dismembered and buried in pieces across the Tampa Bay area. Like, that's real shit, and Leah was talking about real shit that we face. And it's a third rail. It's a tough thing to grab onto, but she did it with both hands and with her eyes wide open, and went specifically to Ed Buck, where it's not just homophobic, hate crime. Now it's compounded with racism. Like, she went straight for this intersectionality, and I got to give her credit for that. It was a ballsy move. It's that's not easy, to tackle that. I don't know if the pages of X Factor were the place to do it, and I certainly don't think it, squeezed into the Hellfire Gala issue was the place to do it. So
Definitely
I'm
not.
of several minds of it. Like, I could have done without this entirely during the gala. I could have done with one more issue that was just about this. Then it would have, I think, had its a little bit more room to breathe. That we wouldn't be talking about, iBoy's fashion. We would literally just be talking about what David went through. But then I
Yeah.
think, well, how much more of that would I have wanted to see anyways? I didn't want to see, pages of David being captured or tortured. I don't want to see him, extracting revenge on the guy. Like, I don't know what could have helped with this story other than it not existing. What about you guys? Is there anything other than a little bit more room that might have made this more palatable?
I think reducing it to a B plot is certainly part of the negative reaction to it, and part of why it doesn't work is that it can't really be
See, I
relegated
didn't see it as the B
to one
plot. I
issue.
saw this as the A plot.
I mean, I
I
did
saw
too,
this
but
as the
since it's
A
a
plot of
gala
this issue.
issue,
I saw the Hellfire Gala as the B part.
I mean, yes, that is how it feels when you're reading the issue. I agree, but since it is part of the gala, it has to be subservient to these other lighter moments, which give me
Yeah.
complete tonal whiplash in a very serious issue that ends with something else even more serious. Don't know if we want to get into that.
Mhm.
I mean, I should not say more serious. It's more serious things coming as well, additionally. And there was a lot of directed violence in this issue, and it was so much to have all at once at what was allegedly a party. And yeah,
Right,
it
but
just
also, like, David is alive. Like, I just want to call, like, David's alive, and David has a garden of corpses. You know what I mean? Like, that's the other thing where I think we gotta kind of take a step back. Like, 2 issues ago or 3 issues, the Morrigan killed the whole damn team. You know what I mean? Like, the whole series opened with Aurora's murder. Like, and in this issue, it's confirmed that Aurora killed somebody, right? And Akira knows about it. So it's a murder investigation book. Like, trigger warning, yes, we're going to get into murder. Like, I think some people, there's a lot of feelings to be had, but, like, also let's take a step back and realize they're mutants on an island where resurrection is a thing, and we have to still treat death, as a serious thing, but also, you know what I mean? It's that we didn't see Prodigy get fridged. You know what I mean? Like, this was a story, and I think they did the
Yeah.
best they could with it.
They did, yeah.
I think
And
there is definitely something to be said about.
What was that, Mac?
I think there is definitely something to be said about, like, it is a hard thing to discuss, and I think one of the ways they did go right about it is they didn't, like, show any of it. There is a panel where we see, David's naked corpse in the basement, which was a lot, but, again, it's a book where I think it's kind of likens back to the first issue, where, North Star even just kind of throws Aurora's body on the ground, and it's like, I feel like it's trying to show how they don't care about death anymore, and I can see where it's coming from, but, like, as a fan, it's like I still have a visceral reaction of, like, ooh, I think that is your sister.
Mm-hmm.
But like I can understand where it's coming from. Yeah.
Yep. We know he's coming back, and that makes it feel a lot better. But yeah, I mean, definitely Prodigy felt like he had a lot of his agency stripped away in the final confrontation by the arrival of his largely white group of friends, who then took over and meted out, I guess, quote unquote, justice. One of the real sticking points for me with this issue is that the gleeful and horny endorsement of, like, carceral state violence and police killing at the end is just not it. That would not have worked no matter how much time you give it. That was disgusting to me. I love this
I didn't
run.
see it as a gleeful endorsement of anything. I didn't see it as a gleeful endorsement of anything. I saw it
By
as
Aurora, at least.
I saw it as, like, yeah, you deserve to die, but we're not going to do that. The X-Men are not killing humans. We're
But we'll
cleaning
leave it
up
to
your
the
mess, and
human
we're leaving
prisons
you
and
the
police
human
to for you, is
authorities.
what-
Well, okay, and I think this goes to, like, a broader topic of when you see in this climate, when you see police in comic books, it's going to have a different effect for everybody. Like, we're just at a different inflection point where Whereas Spidey, leaving somebody webbed up for the cops to pick up with a note, it used to be like something cute and whatever, but now it's like, oh well, here come so like, and I know that Steve, you and I think have different views on police in general.
Fair.
It's a fraught thing, and it's a very charged thing. Like the last time I got pissed off about cops in a comic book was when Cable and Cyclops handed over to Rocky to the police. That was infuriating.
I hated
That
that
was
as much as I
infuriating.
hated.
I'm not going to get into it. But like, okay,
Yeah.
so on that, we both agreed that was horrible. This to me was a little less horrible. But yeah, I get it. I don't see it though as a gleeful endorsement so much as a commentary on kind of the system.
I
Like,
see that's where they were going with it for sure. I mean, that is definitely the intention.
right.
But in the execution, just like Akihiro and Aurora getting horny about the idea of the police maybe killing this guy, I get who he is, right? But like, it's so difficult for me to read that with any enjoyment, especially since I love their relationship. I normally find it very hot.
Well, and it also totally misses the opportunity to talk about the fact that as a rich white predator, this guy is a lot more likely to evade all of that, worst
Yeah.
case scenario justice and get away with it, possibly. Like,
Which is
we're not
also-
seeing
yeah.
with any like satisfaction that justice is met. It's like suggested and hope that it will happen, but we miss that part of the commentary as well.
You make a very good point.
Hey, I try. Yeah, like I said, we could have done without this whole thing the way it played out. And what kills me about it is, as the finale issue, this is something that I think kind of stains the whole run a little bit. Like, I love it. I love X Factor. I'll defend this, this run, like, and pray for, hashtag save X Factor
Yeah,
until
absolutely.
we've actually won and it's back on the shelves. But I think for a lot of fans and a lot of readers out there, this is something really unfortunate that I think is going to taint their perception of the book and their kind of memories and enjoyment of it. And I think that's really sad because, again, this was a very celebrated, queer, diverse, exciting book. And I think we can criticize some of the choices made here, and I think that's good and healthy, but I don't want it to mar the greater work.
Mm-hmm. I reread the entire previous 9 issues sometime earlier this morning, and it's still a series that I love and I wish had gotten so much more time. Leah Williams has been so amazing on the series. Just the character work that she does is phenomenal every single time. I love North Star, I love Akihiro, I love Eye-Boy. None of those are characters that I had any serious attachment to before. Maybe Eye-Boy a little bit, but like, man, now they're all some of my very favorite characters.
Agreed. What about you, Mac?
I agree. I think, as much as, I was not a fan of issue 10, I still think issues 1 through 9, are some of the best comics I've ever read. And
Yeah.
I think the common theme that you see throughout all the criticisms, even on the most extreme ends, everyone can agree that the biggest issue with issue 10 is that, you can tell it was rushed. You can tell they're trying to do a lot with what little time they have left. So it's like, it seems like the biggest fault with X Factor is simply that X Factor ended, which is so ironic to think that
Right.
it might be why it gets tainted for so many fans, and they don't want it back because it was doing so well, and then they have to close all these themes, and they do it in a way that ends insensitively to some people,
Yeah.
and it's just like I'm still trying to wrap my head around why it's been canceled the first time, but.
Yeah,
definitely.
it's just homophobia. I'm on record saying that. I think I don't think anyone will ever confirm that, but I think on some level that's it, because I know physical copies weren't the highest sellers, but it always sold well digitally. Like, there was a rabid fan base for it. Like, if Excalibur is continuing, if X Force is continuing, X Factor should be able to continue. Like, I know that they're not losing money on this, you know what I mean? So it's perplexing. It doesn't make any damn sense. I'm still salty about it.
Wolverine
I do
continuing
think
without X
that
Factor. Wow.
oh my god, don't even. You
Homophobia,
notice
you
I
said
didn't
it.
even say that word? God damn it. And and I love Ben Percy and all that, but like, yeah, like we don't need more Wolverine stories, but this book was definitely doing something and giving a stage to characters that nobody else was touching, like nobody else was North Star isn't doing anything with anywhere else. Like nobody, and I don't think we're going to see somebody, lunging at North Star right now. I felt like these kids were in really good hands, and you mentioned Leah, and yeah, Leah did absolutely incredible work, and just as incredible, I gotta say, is David Baldeon. I love his art. He really created a whole world for these characters, a whole interior lives, and yeah, it really felt like this team was became their kids. Like you could tell the love that both David and Leah poured into every single issue. Some choices, may not have been to everybody's taste, but like I think their hearts were in the right place, and they did the best they could. They never phoned it in. Like they gave it 100% issue after issue. Yeah, let's talk heartbreaking. Their letters were heartbreaking. I pray. Well, let's get into the last scene. So, big reveal at the end. Spoiler alert. Kind of horrifying that Tommy sees his mommy. Whoo, boy, howdy. There was so much already going on emotionally, and that reveal at the end was shocking. Or maybe not shocking, because I think a lot of people, that was kind of a theory. But still, yeah. What do you guys think about that? The Great Pretender has been strangled,
The,
seemingly.
the strangulation marks were a lot for me. We've seen some gore in this, but that was just like, wow. It smacked me right in the face. Not to say I didn't appreciate the reveal, but yeah, absolutely. This issue is a whiplash. Don't know how I feel about Tommy calling her mommy. I don't think we've ever heard anything
Why?
like that from Tommy Shepard before. Maybe I missed it. I don't know. It just seems sort of strange for me. But
I mean, I chalk that up to like in that moment of finding her body, he wasn't Speed. He was like a little kid again. He was like
yeah,
Tommy as like a toddler. Like it was like, mommy. Yeah, I that just tugged at my heartstrings. It worked. Mac, what are your thoughts on Wanda?
I am one of the few people. I am also. I do love Wanda. I'm gonna probably get myself canceled on X Twitter, but I do love Wanda, and I'm so glad to see. We're getting some of the family back together. We have that scene where Wanda and Eric are dancing together. That's why I'm not convinced it's actually Magneto who kills her, but I'm interested to see where this goes. I was definitely fully expecting it to be Wanda. When we saw that dance, I was like, ooh, her hours are numbered.
Oh
I'd
wow.
like
See, I wasn't sure. I'm very excited about this, not because I want to see Wanda hurt, but because I hate, like so many others, I hate the retcon of Wanda and Pietro not being Magneto's children and not being mutants. And I think, with M Day, and then, her outing in Empire wasn't much better. Like Wanda's a fundamentally just like broken character at this point. So I'm hoping that this death and hopeful resurrection will give kind of a fresh start for a character that deserves better. Wanda, and make Wanda a mutant, and let's go a couple of years without having a story about her having, a psychotic break, or just poorly handled commentary about mental health issues. And like, bless her heart, Wanda has been harmed by her editorial history, and we're at this inflection point where, on the other hand, Wanda and the MCU has won over so many hearts. She's such an incredible character. Like, you want to love her. So as an X fan, there's this like push pull, like these are definitely separate Wandas. I'm hopeful that this is, bright future is ahead.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next segment of X's for Podcast. I am Rod. You can find me at Rod, the.
Hi everyone, I'm Broadway. You can find me at bway3rd on Twitter.
Hi, I'm John. You can find me at Lost in Krakoa on Twitter.
Nice. And today we are going to be talking about the unfortunately last issue of X Factor, issue number 10. It's also the last issue of the Hellfire Gala. So we are all done with the Hellfire Gala, folks. That's all we're getting from it. It is done. It is over. I know some people wanted more. I know some people wanted to hurry up and finish. I was kind of in the middle. And we have another special guest with us, a new team member, John. This is his second time with us, and now he's officially part of the X's4 Podcast family. And so is Broadway. He's officially part of the X's Podcast family too. Broadway's been on a lot, but now we are all official members. So this issue, X Factor 10, was really, it was really fun. It was really good, but it was also really controversial to a lot of people. And I want to talk about that one just to get it out of the way. Then we can talk about more of the fun stuff. So both me and Broadway being queer, Black people of color, I wanted to ask you, Broadway, first, like, what did you think of the whole Prodigy situation?
So I felt like it clearly suffered from the fact that the book ended early. It was one of those things where I think the concept was there. I think the execution was a bit rushed, but I also think that the way in which, I mean, this is like very Twitter, but it's like the way in which it was digested on Twitter was just beyond anything sensible. And I felt like there was a lot of people sort of rage tweeting at Leah Williams, like sort of on behalf of Black queer people, instead of like creating a space or a conversation for us to have that, like to talk about it. And there were Black queer people that were not a fan of this issue, and I was like, I hear what you're saying, I don't necessarily agree, but I feel like you're engaging this like reasonably. Whereas I feel like, I mean, again, as with all things Twitter, like it just went very left, and I really didn't like how like foul people were being to Leah Williams. Like that like really was like very painful for me to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. I feel like, the internet is very reactionary.
Yes.
And something happens like this with any issue, like, Way of X issue that happened, people were reactionary to, or this New Mutants issues or anything like that that's happened recently that they have attacked creators for. And it's like, I understand if you don't like something in a story, that's fine. In any issue that comes out, people are going to find problems with, But if it's something like this situation where, if it's a more like racial type situation or things that could have done better, like definitely say something, but say something constructively, like you yelling at someone, telling them they're racist or just a horrible person or something like that. That's not how you change things. And at least not in these situations. And like Leah Williams cares, and she like wants to bring more people of color and queer characters in stories. So if we feel like she's not doing something right, she's gonna listen. But sending her death threats and all of this was not okay. And we know the internet's the internet, but I wish for at least this type of fandom we could be better.
Yeah, definitely. And I wanted to add that I think reactionary takes were not helped by the issue being leaked the night before.
Yes.
So a lot of panels were leaked, and you really can't judge a story, especially a comic book, for one or two panels or 1 or 2 pages, right? And people are always, they go off just for a few pictures and a few words. And yeah, I'm not saying the issue was perfect. I think there are some things that could have been handled a bit better, but I chalk it up more to the series being canceled, because this mystery I think could have worked maybe in like a 5-issue trade, or not just as a rushing to that conclusion because the story is over, right? But yeah, we maybe that's all I have on the controversy about this issue.
Yeah, I mean, with the project thing, from my own piece, what I've been saying to other people is this: they told Leah that this X Factor series was going to end when she was writing issue 9, and then so she had 1 issue to wrap up all the plots that she started when she thought she had more issues to do it. I don't know how many issues she planned for, but she didn't plan for it to end in issue 10. So, like, do I think that the Prodigy situation could have been handled better? Yes. But am I also glad that it was brought up like this? Yes, because this situation did happen, and a lot of people didn't even realize it happened. A lot of comic book fans didn't realize that this was an actual thing that happened in California with a rich white man taking advantage of, Black queer men and, killing them, and that was, I think, in the news for like maybe 1 week, like like 2 years ago, and I looked it up recently, like when this issue came out, and that guy is still, I don't even want to say their name, but that person that did like all these horrific things, they're still waiting for their trial. Like it still hasn't processed, so they still haven't even faced, quote unquote justice or anything. So I talked to many other comic fans, and they were like, I didn't even know this was a real thing. They looked it up, and they're like, oh, this is why Leah did this, because she wanted to bring notice to it. But I think the thing that it could have been done better is like maybe less Dakin and Aurora scenes and more Prodigy scenes, but she wanted to that was one of the plot points. She wanted to close all the plots. So I think that's why we got scenes with everybody, and some like Prodigy didn't get the attention it deserved for the subject matter, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that two things. One, I really think that this also okay, so sorry, three things. One, this definitely struggled in part because it's also a gala tie-in, and so it's like they're putting her in like a very intense bind of wrapping up all of the stories within X Factor, making them related to the Hellfire Gala. Also, it's the lead-in for the trial of Magneto, and so there's like a whole bunch of stuff going on at the same time. I'm hoping, since X Factor is going to be like central to the trial of Magneto, that we will get more of them, but that does make a very sort of like difficult situation for her. I think that Prodigy could have used a singular Prodigy focused issue that would have like really helped flesh this out and really get more of his perspective. And the last thing I'll say is that about the person that this is about, because I don't feel that we need to like name names, but I recognized it immediately. Like I saw that the name is like a reference to this person, and as you said, like it really wasn't covered that heavily. I know that BuzzFeed had done some journalism on it that was really good, but most major news outlets were not covering it, and it really was reflective of the kind of disposability that a lot of the world sees for not just Black people, but Black queer people specifically. And a lot of like queer spaces were talking about it, and especially like ones being led by Black people, but like it really was painful to be like, this person who was like a Democratic donor and like seemingly like a put together person was like drugging and assaulting and at the end of it killing young Black queer men who were extra vulnerable, right? And I did appreciate that, at least for Prodigy, a lot of this was him taking the reins on it to do something about something that he knew was wrong. And like that, even if it's not executed perfectly, I respect that in concept, to be like, no, I'm like, you're not about to do this to me and all these other people. I'm not having it. And I feel like that actually is very much in the spirit of the Krakoan era, is sort of like agency and sort of asserting oneself and being like, no, we're not going to tolerate X, Y, and Z anymore, even if it's not just for mutants.
Exactly. I think that's a good stopping point on that. I just wanted to get that more touchy subject out of the way so we can get our points on that, and then we can continue with the rest of the issue, because that's not all the issue was. We also get another plot point that was cool, but also rushed because of the situation with iBoy and his powers, his like Naruto-esque laser beam thing, which I thought was really cool, but really random for him. But I was like, hey, now he's like powerful. What did y'all think about that?
So I thought it was really cool when he started doing the little things with his hands, like magic tricks. And I'm not sure if you guys know what Krakoan meant. Like he had Krakoan on his chest, and I just thought it was like random words. So I don't know if you guys know what that meant, like spellcast or something.
I think it was. I haven't actually looked it up, which is bad on my part.
Well, but aside from that, when he started doing everything, that was like really, really cool. And it reminded me of, I don't know which issue it was, but when Charles sent that letter to North Star about how people were like getting their powers expanded upon resurrection. So it's like a cool upgrade for iBoy, and I really hope somebody loves it and writes more of him.
I hope so.
He's not just like the goofy sidekick, but like a central character.
Exactly. I mean, I agree. I hope this gives more, because iBoy was just in the background for a long time, for like 10 years. So hopefully this does give him more agency. What did you think about Broadway?
To what John was saying, I did look up the Krakoan, and it is sort of like magic word gibberish. It's not like anything recognizable, but this is one of those other things that it's like, ooh, I would have liked to have seen this expanded upon. Like, this is another example of X Factor deserving to go on longer, because we never really get more about the Body Farm, which is literally Prodigy strategy studying, well, what happens to people's bodies, because we keep seeing that people are resurrected and their powers are like more refined, or like, you know, Sync's powers got an upgrade as well. So I wanted to see more of that, and I feel like this might be a product of that. Again, I mean, I want to trust Leah Williams. You know, Trial of Magneto is supposed to be like the books are supposed to be pretty large, so I feel like we're going to get a lot of time with X Factor and to see like how their powers have upgraded. I hope, because it's interesting. I don't know. I never thought about. I mean, like there's something cool about like, you know, eyes and laser beams, and I want, you know, more of that, because I know that he like sees in like infrared and things like that. So I feel like there is like a through line to sort of like pivot from him recognizing light spectrums into like projecting them, but there needs to be like more time to like flesh that out.
In the end of the issue, when he's taking David to Tommy, I think it was, yeah, that he says something like that he can see things before they happen, sorta, and that reminded me a lot of Cypher.
Oh yeah.
So I think it'd be very interesting if Dog and Trevor had a conversation about how they can read people and read all sorts of different languages.
Yeah.
They've both talked about being able to like read body language and things like that, and especially with Ivoy, it's like it's that coupled with, you know, microscopic vision in one eye, infrared in the other. Like he really does see everything that's going on.
Yeah.
I think he can see into Moira's no place. I mean, that sounded weird.
That would be cool though. I mean, I would think that's probably why Xavier is probably asking about Eyeboy, because what if he can like see through all of Krakoa at one point? Like what if his powers keep evolving to a point where he can just be like X-ray vision to like an extreme standard?
Right. Or just see when Xavier's lying, like about
too.
everything that he lies about. It's a very long
So
list.
90% of the time.
Right? I feel like that's one of the reasons why he wears the helmet, because he's like, well, you can't see my facial structures. Like you can see the mouth, but like that's about it.
Right.
He's like, don't read me. You know?
Yeah.
I will say, back to the moment with Tommy, I really did appreciate that, like, Eyeboy, as you were saying, like, Eyeboy saw his intent to go over there, and he also realized who it was, and, like, was trying to stop Tommy. Like, to me, like, Eyeboy just comes off as, like, a very good friend. Like, he really does think of others and how they feel, and even though he's often sort of in the background, he, like, does that well, if that makes sense. Like, he's a very good supportive friend. He doesn't need to be, like, front and center.
Yeah, I love the friendship that Leah has written with Eyeboy and Prodigy. Like I really
Same.
love that has like developed into something. And then even going on with that, the Prodigy and Speed, that we get more development of them actually like being happy with each other, and
I always set them up too.
and he set them up
Gala.
too. Yeah, basically. Like so I love that we're getting, you know, this more, you know, male on male friendship for younger males that we don't see a lot. And then like this gay male relationship as well that's like healthy and like seems happy, and it's not like, I don't know, it's not like stereotypical or over dramatic. It's just like that they're just being themselves and they're together and they're like cute and happy and young, and it's awesome to see.
And Eyeboy, who thus far as we know is straight and cisgender, is like in a house full of gays and is like the only straight guy and is very comfortable. Like he seems like really comfortable in that space, and I love that as like also as like representation of like allyship and friendship over like across differences.
Completely. I applaud, you know, Leah and David for just giving us these moments with them throughout the whole series of X Factor.
Agreed.
Now, before I do want to ask like how we feel about the series as a whole at the end. But before we get to that, we have to discuss obviously Scarlet Witch.
Mhm.
Scarlet Witch is dead, and I want to point. I mean, I'm not the only one that guessed that was going to happen. I mean, most of the internet did, but I do want to point out I did guess this on the podcast that she was going to die, so I was right. So many other people were right too. Whatever, I was right. That really, it didn't shock me, but it like also kind of shocked me. I was like, oh, she's gonna die. They're gonna bring her back probably as a mutant. That's what Trial of Magneto's about. This all makes sense now, because really at first when Trial of Magneto was announced, I was like, what is this? I don't understand. What did y'all think about Scarlet Witch being dead at the end of this?
Even though like we all kind of sort of knew already, but I think it was really well written with Tommy saying mom and all that. But it also was added a lot to with Sword last week with the dance and everything. So it hit, and I think the moment landed really well with everyone being shocked. And I don't know where I read it, but I read today that it makes no sense for Marvel to have Wanda be such a prominent character in movies and film and TV, and like as nothing in comics. And I think this story has been building since the I think House of X number 4, where I think that was the first time we saw the Pretender in House of X number 4. So I mean, this is a story we all wanted to see it, like Wanda reckon with Krakoa, and I'm very excited about it. And I want her back as a mutant. Pietro, I don't mind, but Wanda,
I agree. I don't care about Petro.
that's what Magneto says all the time.
Yeah, I agree with Magneto on that. I'm like, I don't care about Pietro. He's a jackass. Like, as to me, he has no good qualities. I'm sorry to people that actually like him. Robert, what do you think about Scarlet Witch being deceased?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely where I thought this was going. It just felt like, okay, like shocking murder at the Hellfire Gala. That feels, and also like Wanda and the Pretender of it all has been like sprinkled throughout the books. And so it just like felt very much like that was where this was going. And I think that that's the kind of sort of emotional story that I want to see from Magneto. Like Planet Size X-Men was badass on his part to like put all that together, but I feel like we haven't had like a gripping sort of Magneto story. Like Xavier is like dealing with being a terrible father to Legion in Way of X, but like Magneto hasn't had that yet, so I'm actually very excited about that. One thing that was wild though was that moment. Like I figured she was gonna die. Did not expect her body to just be sort of left at the gala with like strangle marks, just like in a bush. Like I really was not expecting that. I thought we would actually see like somehow like part of her dying or something like that, but like no, she was just there dead for like seemingly hours. And I know that Tommy is kind of her son in that weird Wanda way, but like it was interesting to see his reaction, because that doesn't seem very Tommy from what like I know of the character. Like he just seemed very vulnerable in that way, and it's like, oh, like I found that really pleasant. Like that I mean, even if you're not close with like your parent, if you walked in on like their dead body, like that's how you would react.
Yeah, and I know Leah Williams is a big Buffy fan. That's a reference to Buffy. Because that's the exact word she says. She's like, "Mom, mommy," when she sees her mom dead in the body.
Oh wow, okay.
So I don't like. It's very like I know it's only 2 words, but it's word for word for what
Yeah.
Buffy said. So if it's not that, it's very coincidental. If it's not a reference. But this for the Buffy fans out there that also noticed that, if you did. But I do want to say, like, yes. So I have this theory with the Scarlet Witch, because I'm glad you brought up the strangle marks on her neck. So on Sword, at the end of Sword, we have that moment with her Magneto, but Magneto is in his, like white Magneto outfit. I forget what he actually calls it, but he's not in his gala outfit. So why isn't he? The gala was still, it was like 3 a.m., but the gala was still going, like ending at that point, but he was still there. Why wasn't he in his gala outfit? That's the only time we saw him in that suit, that moment. No, we didn't see him in that suit any other time during the gala. So I'm like, was that actually Magneto? Or was that Mystique pretending to be Magneto, and then she killed Scarlet Witch after that moment?
I was actually thinking about how the time like doesn't kind of match up, because one is found, I think, before Planet Size. I think.
No,
Because
Planet
she's
Size.
still in her outfit, in her like gala outfit, and in Planet Size. Well, I actually don't remember, but I think it would be weird, if like the Omegas went off to space and just let Wanda, out in the bushes. So I think it's gonna be like we need a whole reread of everything, like to see how the times match up.
Oh, I mean,
the suit it's very interesting, and I actually hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, I mean, Planet Size, when they formed the planet, it was definitely before the gala. Like they did it like a day before, or like
Yeah,
right before.
and I'm looking at Sword right now. So at 3:17 a.m. local time, that's when Wanda gets there, and then I think it's at like 4 is when they find her. It says, what is it? Yeah, 4:04 a.m. So yeah, something happened like obviously during that time. And in Way of X, they don't say what time it is that Kurt sees them dancing. It's just the morning after. No, sorry, it's right before the morning after. He's like rampaging through the gala, they're dancing, and then the morning after. So yeah, I do think the suit thing is interesting. I always chalked it up to him having gone and done planet stuff with like all of them and like seeing Storm and then coming back. But it actually is a good question. Like, what look, when did Magneto leave to go to Mars, and did he come back? Like, we never explicitly see him come back,
Mhm.
which leads me to believe that that's not him. Like, I'm team, it's not Magneto. Especially if he like did it into a lot of people are like, oh, well, he probably did this to resurrect her as a mutant, but I just don't imagine him murdering her at the strangling her at the Hellfire Gala, leaving her body in a bush, and being like, I'll deal with it later. I'm gonna go drink with Iska. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, if anything, Magneto would tell her to, get crucibled,
Right.
Yeah.
not just kill her off panel.
And he likes pomp and circumstance. He would live for that. I mean, he just organized terraforming a planet. You think that same person is gonna not take the opportunity to like demonstrate to all of Krakoa the righteousness of the Great Pretender and redeem her in front of all of her peers? Like, that to me feels very Magneto.
Mhm. Exactly. I feel the exact same way. That's why I was like, because I was really, I was like, well, who could have, killed Scarlet Witch? And then I was like, yeah, that outfit changed. So like, well, maybe who would be able to, change forms? And obviously my mind directly goes to Mystique. And she already has a vendetta against Xavier and Magneto. And, she can't, like, Mystique's not really going to be able to kill Legion. So who's the
Right.
next option? I mean, she'd have to really, I don't know, she'd really have to get the jump on Scarlet Witch as well, but she must have done something to
No, no. So we'd have to think with Mystique, why would she kill Wanda? Because it's not like, I mean, everyone's been the Great Pretender, and I don't think Xavier and Magneto are discouraging people from doing that. Well, at least from what we've seen in other books. So it would be a very interesting angle if it actually was Raven, and why did she do that?
Yeah.
I mean, I struggle to find a reason for her doing that, other than she like overheard the conversation and was like, "Yeah, fuck Eric, I'm gonna kill Wanda right now."
Yeah, I'm trying to find the reason as well. One of mine that I'm thinking of is like, yeah, maybe she did hear the conversation or see him like send her, the invite of, coming.
Yeah.
But then how would she know like when she was coming? How would Mystique know?
Right.
So I don't know. It's up in the air. I'm really excited to see like.
So, but if it's true, that's like a galaxy brain take.
True. It is.
Yeah, I feel like part of it is to spite Charles and Eric, right? Because they have been denying her destiny. This could also be a bargaining chip. Like, if you kill Scarlet Witch and Magneto cares about her, what if she's like, okay, we will offer resurrection protocols to Scarlet Witch if you bring back Destiny? I also feel like it's a stunt to set up Eric, because again, that adds to your leverage. Like, if Magneto's about to go to the pit of exile, like, they're gonna do whatever to prevent that from happening.
Yeah.
I also feel like there's got to be other let's say it is Mystique. I feel like there's got to be other players in this, because also there's like the telepathy of it all. Like, they could just like scan brains and be like, well, that wasn't Magneto. So I feel like there's got to be like a better way to like cover your tracks for this conspiracy to work out, unless Mystique is just an idiot and it's going to be another moment of her just being a clown, and then she's going to be like, no, I'm actually just upset because I'm the clown and I'm just going to burn this whole circus down.
Yeah, I mean, both of those could be true.
Right. Yes, and
right. I'm like, both of those could rightfully be true. All I can say at this point is like, I'm excited for Trial Magneto, and Trial Magneto obviously is going to lead into Inferno.
Right.
So I am just so much drama is about to happen on Krakoa that I am just overwhelmed with happiness, because I love the X-Men drama. It's very fun to read.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Wikipedia page for the Reign of X, and it's like Trial of Magneto starts in August, and then Inferno is in September, and also right before Inferno is the Onslaught revelation for Way of X. So it's like shit is really hitting the fan for everybody, and I'm interested to see how all of those are going to like relate to each other, and if they sort of like cause a spiral effect.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree. So,
Just one thing about Inferno and Trial. Do they overlap? Because Trial, I think it's 5 issues, so
I
no way it ends in September
I
unless it's weekly.
I don't know. I think Trial ends right before Inferno. I think. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
I think it's gonna be weekly or bi-weekly. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
It's gonna go fast. Like they're gonna chop it out fast because I think it's gonna have a lot to deal with it. I think it's gonna be one of the key blocks to bring on Inferno. Now, there's been a little hints of what's going to bring on Inferno in other books as well, like with the latest Cable issue, bringing back old Cable and all this. Like, I just feel like all that's going to like just stack up and bring on the Inferno.
Okay, so I'm seeing the solicits, and I see Inferno on the last week of September, and Trial has an issue just 2 weeks before. So who knows how they match up?
That is interesting. I mean, they might overlap a little bit because, I mean, if they're building on top of each other, then that would make sense.
yeah.
So they might be booked together actually when it all comes out. They might be hand in hand.
A secret Hawksbox.
Right. But speaking of like this, the whole like X Factor book, I want to know y'all's thoughts, and this will be like our closing thing on what you thought of like David Baldion's and Leah Williams' goodbye letters, and then just the series as a whole. I want to start with you, John. What did you think of this series and their goodbye letters?
So, well, the letters, I'm starting with the letters.
Yeah.
They were a bit emotional for me because, both Leah and David they're hurt by the cancellation. And you could see it in Twitter, and you could see it in the letters. But I think also they showed that they understood how much love they've received this past couple of months, well, almost a year now, over a year since the first issue came out. And yeah, and for the series, like before I started reading X Factor, only like character I knew was basically Rachel, from the Claremont run and Excalibur and all that. So yeah, and it's really cool how in just 10 issues, which is really nothing, you care so much, about these relationships and the mysteries and the friendships. And yeah, it's really sad, to see it go. And I was very happy to see, like, this was the most diverse book, both in all kinds of diversity. And yeah, you could tell the creators put a lot of love into it, a lot of care. And yeah, I had a really fun time reading it, getting to know these characters, and I hope we can see them again soon after the trial.
I hope so too. What about you, Broadway? Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I also felt really just like sad. I mean, like, I don't know, sometimes like you reach the end of something and just that sense of finality is like it like dawns on you that it's like, oh, it's actually over. I am glad that again those characters are going to be very important in Trial of Magneto, but I feel like it's going to be different because also I don't believe that David Baldion is the artist for that. It's Valerio Schiti, right? So like it's going to be who I also adore, but it's just going to be a different energy. You could definitely feel the sense of like pride in their work. And to me, like, despite all of the sort of Marvel corporate foolishness and all of that, they were like proud of what they produced. And like that made me really happy because this was probably the first time I've ever read a book with this many like queer people in the cast of different ages and ethnicities and genders. One thing that I thought was really cool about X Factor was, I don't know, we talk a lot about like violence against like trans people and things like that, and like the sort of mutant metaphor of it all. And I really did sit there and I was like, yeah, imagine if we could just like investigate, solve these like murders and bring people back like that, like, and like we would do it in like a communal way. And that's kind of how this book felt, like people in a community taking care of other people in their community. And that is something that most other comic books are not doing, and like they should feel very proud to have presented that and to have it received so like well and to be so beloved.
Definitely. I mean, I completely agree. I mean, I felt the same way about the letters. Because, we interviewed David Baldion when he was just on like, when only like issue 3 came out.
Right.
He
I
was
remember
so
that.
excited about like just the series and working with Leah and how they work so well together. And he loved all these characters. Like, he's just such a sweet man and talented. And I was so excited to see what else was going to happen. So that's why it's even sadder, honestly, when I was reading these letters. And I know Leah is like such a passionate, great writer, and she loved these characters as well, so they were really close to her heart. part. But it made me happy too, because, you know, it really confirmed how we felt, that they did care, because they expressed it in these letters, and they showed like the friendship they had with each other, with all the writers, and like just the collaboration they had. And I feel like I've said this before about them. I feel like a lot of comic creator groups for books should have like the relationship they have, you know.
Yes,
Because that
yes.
will make a good book. You know, when you really listen to each other and collaborate and take each other's ideas and like really, you know, mix with each other, that's what makes a good book. You know, no one needs to be just like, only my ideas matter and that's it. You know, you're part of a team and let's work together. So I love that about it. To speak on both of your points about the whole series as a whole, it was the most diverse book. Like it was one of my top 3 X-Men books and one of my top 3 Marvel books that was current, you know, current running. And I feel like one of the things that made me the happiest was how she wrote Kyle and North Star relationship, because, you know, we haven't seen a lot of that in years. we just kind of see them in the background, or at least Kyle in the background, and North Star is just like being an asshole somewhere, and then that's it. And not like North Star still wasn't an asshole in this book, but he was still like, she made him more likable and still kind of to his nature an asshole. But with him and his husband, you know, Kyle and North Star, they weren't written just as like the stereotypical gay husbands. They were written like a true to form couple that like has like weird little arguments or weird little conversations, and like with the groceries and all of this, they were just being a couple. And, you know, you don't really see that with like, you know, people of color relationships, especially queer relationships, just being a couple and not being just a gay couple or a queer couple. They're just a couple. And I appreciated that. They weren't just be like, oh, well, they're the queer couple over there being queer. No, they're just loving each other and experiencing, you know, being married to each other around other people. And that was refreshing to see in this book.
And it was also wonderful to see the way in which, like, one, Jubilee mentioned, you know, maybe they should, like, you know, bring a little baby in the world for Shogo, but also you could see that in the way North Star kind of took Prodigy under his wing, and he also, like, protected Boy from Xavier and all of them. It's like he really sees these people as his kids, and that's such like a particular kind of queer relationship. Like, I have a bunch of dudes that I call my aunties, and they like that's the kind of relationship we have. Like, I have friends that call me mom. Like, it's like, I don't know, it's a very like kind of sacred queer relationship. I also, yeah, to your point, I really like that they weren't sort of forced to be a model or be like the intro to gay people being human beings, right? They could just be characters instead of trying to like be the like first representation anyone ever saw. They were like, it's too late for that. These two are gay. Like, you're just gonna have to deal with it, and they're individuals. Really like the moment where Captain America was like, wait, you live in Krakoa and you're human? And Kyle was just like, sure am, enjoy the party. Like, it really blew his mind that like, oh no, this isn't some sort of weird like segregationist shenanigans. It's just like, you don't necessarily have a right to be here, Cap, but like Shogo and Kyle do, like plenty of people do. Even Ryan Braddock gets to like pop in and hang out. Like, it's like, yeah, it's just like a normal country.
Hey guys, if you like that cut from X's4 Podcast, you'll be sure to like some of our other materials. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out these other amazing videos here at X's4 Podcast.